The Town of Los Gatos Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, November 14th, 2018 is now called to order. Please take a moment to silence your devices. Mr. Paulson, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Badami?
Here.
Commissioner Birch?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Janoff?
Here.
Commissioner Hanson?
Here.
And Vice Chair Hudas.
Here. I'd like to ask that everyone join Commissioner Birch to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I've been asked to chair the meeting this evening upon the resignation of Michael Kane. I'd like to take a second to thank Michael for his service to the town and his sense of duty. Although he and I may not have agreed on several items, I have the utmost respect for Michael and his significant devotion to many areas, including protecting the hillsides. Thank you, Michael, and thank you to staff and other commissioners as I manage my way through this meeting. As the Planning Commission conducts this meeting this evening on behalf of the Town Council and residents of Los Gatos, we encourage active participation, which is essential for democracy and critical to the work of the Planning Commission. That participation can occur through written comments about agenda items submitted to the staff prior to a meeting, which are always welcome and helpful. And during the meeting, there are two opportunities for members to participate. During verbal communications period, an individual may speak on any topic not on the agenda, and during the hearing on a specific item, any member of the public may speak about that item that is on the agenda. If you wish to address the Commission tonight during verbal communication period or during the consideration of an agenda item, please complete a speaker card located on the back of the benches where you're seated. Turn the card into a staff member. Please print your name clearly so I can try to manage it. When you speak, I ask that you come up to the podium and adjust the microphone so that you are speaking directly into it. Please state your name and address for the record. In fairness to all who want to speak at this meeting, it's requested that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. In addition to their service on the Planning Commission, members of the Commission serve on several town committees. Are there any reports tonight? Commissioner O'Donnell.
We had a joint meeting with the Town Council representatives and the Planning Commission representatives on the proposal of the property located just, I forget the address at the moment, just down the block from the coffee roasting place with the American flag painted. You'll all know that.
25
on the
East
side.
Main, I think. Yep.
And so the two architects were present representing the owner, and they basically wanted our feedback. They had already appeared before the Historical Preservation Committee and gotten that feedback. And so we had a good discussion, and they're going to come back and make some changes based on this discussion, but they made a number of changes based on the HPC's suggestions too. So at the moment, there is no application filed, so those two meetings have been advisory only, but I thought it was a good meeting, and we were only missing Michael, and we did miss Michael.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
On October 30th, the General Plan Advisory Committee, of which the planning commissioners represented on that are Commissioner Birch, Commissioner Janoff, and myself, met for the first time. And we're kicking off the process of updating the general plan for actually the 2040 time period. So this is a 20-year time frame, whereas our last general plan update was for a 10-year time frame. And so this is a great opportunity for all of our residents and business owners to give input into the general plan process. But it is only the beginning. What we did in our first meeting is we established the chair and vice chair. I'm the chair of the GPAC, and Commissioner Janoff is the vice chair of the GPAC. And we discussed the input from the community workshop that was held on October 17th, in which approximately 17 residents attended and gave some input on what are the big issues and opportunities for the town. We discussed one page of their input and took us a couple of hours. So we will be continuing that discussion on December 11th. And as I said, this is the beginning of a 2-year process, so we will be having more meetings, and there will be more joint study sessions with the town council and whatnot. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the report. Are there any matters that the commission would like to discuss, commissioners would like to discuss about the commission itself? Okay, seeing none. We now come to the verbal communications portion of our meeting. Members of the public are invited to address the commission on any issue not on the agenda of tonight's meeting. Please remember, if there is a 3-minute time limit. Do we have any cards? Okay, then no one has to remember that. Okay, we have some consent items tonight, and there are actually 2 items to be considered in a single motion. We will be considering item 2 and item 3. I'm sorry, item 1 and item 2. So these are items to be acted upon in a single motion. Before the Planning Commission acts on the consent calendar, any member of the public or the commission may request that any item be removed from the consent agenda. At the chair's discretion, items removed may be considered either before or after the public hearings portion of the agenda. So I'm going to just read the 2 that we have. The first one is the approval of the minutes, October 24th, 2018, and the second is an application at 248 Jared Lane, architectural and site application S16054, which is requested to be continued. The staff and the applicant request that the item be continued to December 12th, 2018 meeting to provide additional time for preparation and review of revised materials. So, are there any comments or motion on the desk item? I'm sorry, on the consent calendar. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I'll move the approval of the consent calendar, both items.
Commissioner Badami.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. So we'll now move on to item 3, which is 14331 and 14341 Browns Lane, subdivision application M18-005 and variance application V-18-001, requesting approval of a variance for the subdivision of one lot into 2 lots on property zoned R18, APN 409-14-035 and 409-14-036. Property owners, ZDE Holdings, Inc. and Coates Family Trust. Applicant, Michael Coates. Planner, Sean Mullen. May I have a show of hands of commissioners who visited the property under consideration? Okay. Are there any disclosures? None. Okay. Mr. Mullen, I understand you'll be giving the staff report this evening.
Thank you. Before you tonight is a request for a variance to subdivide one lot into 2 lots. The subject property is currently developed with 2 non-conforming single-family residences and associated accessory structures. This subdivision application is a requirement of a 1983 judicial order stemming from the distribution of an estate. The owner at the time did not comply with this order, and a notice of violation was recorded on the property by the town to prevent continuous change of ownership for lots that were created illegally. The current owner has applied for subdivision of the single lot into 2 lots to satisfy the requirements of the judge's order and the Subdivision Map Act. The proposed lots would comply with the minimum lot size and frontage requirements of the R18 zone. However, as detailed in the staff report, the subdivision requires approval of a variance to reduce the required lot depth for both lots, and for Lot 1, the required lot depth for lots backing onto a railroad right-of-way. The staff report details the findings required for granting a variance and recommends that those findings can be made for this application. And given the analysis presented in the staff report, staff recommends approval of the variance and subdivision application subject to the conditions of approval included as Exhibit 3. This concludes staff's presentation. We are available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Are there any questions of staff from any of the commissioners? Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you for the staff report was excellent, by the way. I just had a couple of questions for curiosity, and they're probably for our town attorney. The first one was on the 1983 court order. Is there like a statute of limitations on a court order, or is this more of the situation that the land is already subdivided in without being legally subdivided and having two houses?
So there is no statute of limitations on it. It's a court order that goes on forever, but it was just, that court order was really just a division of the property. Technically, what should have happened when that court order was done, they should have immediately came to the town and did this subdivision. And it's an interesting history on this property in that when I came in, the file was quite large based on code violations and disrepair of the property. It had quite a colorful history with numerous dogs, flags, everything in the neighborhood that they just couldn't get cleaned up, and that's where the notice of violation. So what happened was there's two houses out there, and one was being sold, and how it was being sold without proper title, I have no idea, but then it would go into foreclosure because they couldn't improve the property. They'd come to the town and say, we want to improve this property, and we'd say, no, you have to do a subdivision, and no one would go through with that process. So it was continually not being improved until where we are now, but the court order never elapses is a short answer for you.
Okay, thank you. My other question is about the setback from the railway. It's clear that there's a 125-foot setback. My question was about when there's a variance, we do have the authority, it wasn't mentioned that we didn't, so I assume that is the case, but I wanted to ask a question because when you consider like things that happen with Caltrans, we usually have to go ask Caltrans if it's okay. So I'm assuming that we don't need to ask the Southern Pacific Railway for the variance. I mean, there's already other properties that are within the setback. I saw that in the report. So
That's correct. The town wouldn't need to ask permission because this is the town's regulation and not Southern Pacific Railroad. So the request is for a deviation from the town's laws, not a requirement of Southern Pacific.
thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for staff? Okay, we'll go to the applicant now. And the applicant has 10 minutes to make a presentation. I have a card from Michael Kowitz. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct, but you can correct me when you get up to the mic. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Kowitz, and I have the privilege to solve a problem that's been ongoing for, I think, some 35 years, and about 2 years of diligently working with the town attorney and the planning staff. This is my first time going through a process like this, so I'd like to commend the professionalism and thoroughness of staff. To Joel and Sally and to Sean, who's been really, really helpful. It has an illustrious history previously, and the inheritors received the judicial partition, but failed to follow through on the requirements of the California MAP Act, and that's how we got here. And so we've applied the proper procedural tasks and getting a tentative map and the application, all the fees, and I think we're all on the same page for the final map. The question that I would have is that the town was forced to put a notice of violation on the two properties, and I'm wondering if the Planning Commission follows through with the recommendation and affirms the recommendation of staff, if the notice of violation would then be rescinded. Of course, we know we need to do a final map and adhere to the requirements that are in Exhibit 3, and we're good with that. But that would be a question that I would have and hope that the Planning Commission would rescind that. Other than questions that you might have of sort of the illustrious history of how this all came to be, I think the staff report was extremely thorough and right on the mark, so I don't know if there's much more that I could add. I'm just excited that we can make Los Gatos a little better, and since we've been cleaning it up, we've had no more complaints. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Coates. Are there any questions from the commission for the applicant? Okay. So the question that you raised is one that I just want to let you know we can raise that later when we have questions for staff. So,
Okay.
Okay, so thank you. So now we will invite comments from members of the public. I don't see any cards, but if anyone would like to speak, we're happy to take your comments. Okay. Seeing none, then we allow the applicant another 5 minutes, if you like, for any rebuttal or any further discussion.
I think we're good.
Okay, we're good. Okay. So thank you very much. We will now close the public portion of the public hearing and ask if commissioners have any questions of staff on this or wish to comment on the application or perhaps introduce a motion for consideration by the commission. Commissioner Birch.
I would like to ask the town attorney the question that was posed by the applicant.
Certainly, if approved by Planning Commission and once the final map is approved and filed, we would rescind that notice of violation.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, comments, motion? Commissioner O'Donnell.
I'll make a motion. The motion would be we find that the project is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to the adopted guidelines as set forth in paragraph 1 of paragraph B in our report today, and the states the reasons why it isn't covered. We would make the findings, or the motion would make the findings required of section 292170 of the town code for granting of variance. That's more particularly described in Exhibit 2. And we would make the required findings as required by sections 66,474 of the Subdivision Map Act, further mentioned in Exhibit 2. That would be the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Do we have a second? Commissioner Birch.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, the motion has been seconded, so I will now call the question. In favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So after action by the commission that we've taken, Mr. Paulson, are there any appeal rights regarding this item?
There are, thank you. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision. The decision must be appealed within 10 days. The forms are available in the clerk's office, and there is a fee for filing an appeal.
Great. Thank you. And Mr. Paulson, do you have a report from the Director of Community Development, as that's our last item on the agenda?
Yes, thank you. So Commissioner Hanson already mentioned the next General Plan Advisory Committee meeting, which will be happening on December 11th. Here in the chambers at 7 p.m. Additionally, the Planning Commission only has one more Planning Commission hearing before the end of the year, and that will be December 12th. So we'll see you then next for the last Planning Commission meeting. At the last council meeting, the items that the commission would be interested in, or the item was the appointment of board and commission members. And so we had Ms. Hanson reappointed to the commission, and then Reza Tavana, who's currently on the Parks Commission. He was also appointed, so he will be joining us in January. Bob Cowan was reappointed to the Historic Preservation Committee, and Todd Jarvis was reappointed to the General Plan Committee. And so with that, that concludes staff's report.
Okay, thank you very much. We look forward to having an additional member of the commission, Mr. Tavana, next year. And with that, I would like to just wish everyone a wonderful Thanksgiving, and it's my favorite holiday. And we'll see you all in December. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.